right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's committee meeting. Mr. Chair, I confirm that we have quorum presently and we are live on YouTube, so you're welcome to begin whenever you're ready.
Wonderful, thank you. I declare this meeting called to order. May I have an approval of the agenda, please? Mr. Knox and Mr. Storms, all in favor, raise your hands. Councillor Osterhoff, you deny? Oh, thank you, and it's unanimous. May I have a confirmation of the previous minutes from February 27th? A mover, Mr. Storms and Ms. Kainer, all in favor? Also unanimous, thank you. Are there any pecuniary interests? Do you live near any of these properties? No. Seeing none, we will move on. Delegations. Are there any delegations, Ms. Clerk? None. Seeing none, we will move on to briefings, which I believe there are none. And then we will move to number 7, the business, new appeals, 36 Rockford Place. So the way this is going to go, we're going to listen to staff first. They're going to give us an indication as to the intent and the purpose of the bylaw or any reasons for it. Then we will ask questions. Following that, we will hear from the appellants as to why they may need the minor variance. We will ask them questions. We will ask from the public, and then we will deliberate among ourselves to come up with a judgment. So if we can start with that, Mr. Delahunt, carry it on.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So a fence height complaint was made to the city, and the site was visited on August 18th of last year. It was for a section of fence between the properties of 32 and 36 Rockford. After the measurements were taken for approximately 6 panels, the fence was over the allowable height by about 2 1/8 inches. So that's of fence height and 1 foot of lattice work. And the lattice work
I think we've lost you there. We may be experiencing technical difficulties. We lost you about 10 seconds before I mentioned it. You could repeat what you said about the last thing I heard was the lattice on top.
Oh, the lattice on top is a 2x6. So it's not a typical lattice work that you'd see. It's not your normal work, basically. If you went to Rona or Lowe's or wherever, it's a project that you can see through. So it's not your average lattice work. But anyway, the fence panels. Sorry, say again.
You are cutting in and out.
You're cutting in and out. I'm sorry. I'm catching some of it, but it's not consistent.
Okay, my apologies.
May have to go in and out again, out and then back in.
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I do believe we're just having some issues with the internet connection, even here at City Hall. It's kind of having a stop and freeze effect. So, Steve, if you wanted to maybe turn off your camera for now and see if that helps the matter, and then we'll go forward from there.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so please feel free to cut in if you need me to repeat anything. My apologies for the connection issues. So the fence is on a little bit of a slope between the two properties. So like most fences, you know, the fence height will be taken on an average. The homeowners, after we discovered that the fence was over the allowable height of 7 feet, the homeowners were willing to raise the grade, but were not willing to lower the fence height, as they indicated that they'd constructed many fences in the city with the same measurements. We informed them of the different options to bring the fence into compliance or to apply for the appeal. Because the fence is only 2 1/8 inches over the 7-foot maximum. The building department doesn't feel, it feels that it meets the intent of the bylaw and it doesn't have any concerns with it remaining.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Mr. Knox?
So I have a question, Mr. Delahunt, on firstly, the lattice. Does the lattice meet the definition for the bylaw of lattice being solid boards?
So lattice is not defined in the bylaw. So typically the building department would allow a 7-foot height fence. The bylaw indicates 6-foot fence with 1 foot of lattice, but because lattice is not defined, then we would allow 7 feet of fence.
You mentioned you checked 6 panels. The panels, the height of the panels going from the front of the house to the street side, are they graduated or are they the same height?
No, they're graduated. So you can see that there's steps. There is a PowerPoint, but I don't know if we're able to share it. Just, it has a few pictures that gives a better idea.
Okay. And the extension of the fence, does it go on to city property at the boulevard?
No, so after the complaint was made, it was indicated that the fence was built on city property. And after looking at it with a couple different departments, it was determined to not be on city property.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Ms. Kaner, go ahead.
Well, there, can you hear me? I don't know if the earphones work. Okay. So I was wondering, Mr. Delahunt, if you could ascertain whether the fence was blocking the view of the neighbor next door. So if he pulled out of his driveway, that was going to be a problem in terms of pedestrians or dogs.
So the fence would be allowed to be constructed there. It's not obscuring any views. If you look at the imagery, there's no sidewalks on that side of the street. And I mean, he would be allowed to construct the fence. So whether or not, even if he shortened it by 2 inches, it's still not obstructing the views.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Delahunt. May I ask for the applicant to give us a justification for this minor variance? And please note that we are only referring to the height of the fence. All the other stuff that was mentioned in the literature, we are not dealing with.
Hi, can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak here. It's always been our position that this complaint was sort of made in haste, that this is part of a larger restoration of our front-facing property. And despite the indications that it's a spite build, we don't actually construct things or execute plans in that way. We did want additional privacy. Again, my husband is a fence contractor, so we do know the bylaw. We know that lattice isn't defined. We know that the height requirements are there, but we've also made more than one attestation that our intent is to raise the grade. We have a city-owned maple tree on the front lawn that over 40 years has eroded a considerable amount of soil from the canopy. And we're wanting to grow green grass and have nice softscaping. But we finished hard construction, so stonework, the driveway, and the fence construction like late last year. I think that the deadline that was given to us from Steve originally was like November 27th to finish the remediation work. It's winter, like winter had showed up, so we're not quite done. We also don't have a great deal of cooperation in carrying out that work with the neighbor on the 32 Rockford side. So this is why we've sought the appeals relief, is just to sort of like, I'm in master's school. We also run a business. Like, we just don't have the energy to continue carrying on the hamster wheel with this. We would just like to know once and for all what the solution is, right?
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I actually do have a question with regards to raising the grade, and this is to staff. Would that alleviate the issue of height?
I believe it would. I mean, given, if the grade settles over time or anything like that. Yeah, we talked with the homeowners and they discussed that they were willing to raise the grade. That wasn't an issue, but they said they had complications with it, the season, difficulties with the neighbor. And the fence is measured from the exterior side of the fence. So that would be on the neighbor's side of the fence. So if they own that property, they could, but if that's the neighbor's property, then they would have to talk to the neighbor about that.
Understood. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Mr. Knox, go ahead.
Again, for Mr. Delon, just to carry on with that, is banking along the fence line considered grading, or does it have to go out a number of feet so it's a level or a slope?
I would say as long as it's not affecting drainage from between the two properties, that it would be permitted. If it's not going to affect drainage, then I would feel that if they raise the height, then it would be fine. But it just can't be it can't be allowed for drainage from one property to the next. So it would still have to meet the grading plan of the city or the home builder.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Oosterhoff, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to thank for the presentations and also for the explanation. I have reviewed it earlier as well, but I'm content with what I've heard and be able to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment on this file?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, there is at least one member of the public with us today, so I'm just going to give an opportunity should they wish to provide any comments on the current file, if they could please raise their hand in Zoom so that we may identify you. Just give a couple more seconds. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. And there are no hands at this time, Mr. Chair.
Wonderful, thank you. In that case, it's now up to the committee. We can now have discussions and or we can put up a motion to either approve or disapprove of this and or with or without conditions. Mr. Storms.
I'm like the counselor, I'm satisfied with what I've heard on this particular one. If I'm understanding what this city is saying, there's no issues with respect to safety. They would allow the minor variance in this case. On that recommendation, I'd be willing to move to put forward that we allow the minor variance.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councilor Oosterhoff. Now the discussion is on the floor with regards to this motion to allow the minor variance. Anybody else wish to comment on this? Okay, seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Congratulations, you have your minor variance. Moving on to the next one, that would be 1336 Thornwood Crescent. And I will follow the same procedure as we did for the first one. First, we'll ask staff about the situation, the intent and the purpose and their opinion on that. And who from staff, will that be you, Mr. Delahunt?
Yeah, I can speak on that. Thank you. So another fence height complaint was made to the city, and the site was visited July 19th of last year. One section of the street side facing fence is about 5 inches over the 7-foot allowance on average. And the height for the remaining fence varies between 2 and 4 inches. It's 2 inches on the interior side of the property. So 1336 Thornwood, when the measurements were taken on that side, that would be their backyard. They are 2 inches over the allowable 6-foot fence with 1-foot lattice. And we didn't have access to the neighbor's side, but it looked to be about 2 inches difference. So it might be about 4 on the other side. The building department met with the homeowners to discuss solutions to lower the height of the fence, and the owners again did not wish to lower the height. They instead applied for the appeal, and because the fence doesn't pose any risk to safety within the community, and it is an exterior fence, and 2 inches is minor. The building department doesn't have any concerns with it remaining the height that it is.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions? Mr. Knox?
Mr. Delahunt, at the beginning, you talked about a section of the fence which is about 5 inches higher than the allowance.
Correct, yes.
So on average, is it the 2 to 4, or is that a particular section which is above by 5 inches?
It's a particular section. So picture any square fence, the front fence generally with the gate. It was the
Right.
road facing the road on the street side. So
Right.
between the properties on average, it was about 2 to 4, but the front fence was on average 5. So between a few panels, it would be 5 inches over.
Right. And is that the area that was recommended to lower that specific sections?
It was the entire sections that were measured. So when I get the complaint, it was just that the fence was over the 7-foot
Right.
allowance. So I measured the entire thing. So it would be all the sections were recommended to be lowered. But because 2 inches is so minor on the one section, and it's quite an onerous amount of work to complete lowering a fence for that, we don't feel that there would be an issue with it. We believe the 5 inches was the 5-inch section was also built with the intent of the bylaw. It's due to grading and sloping in the yard. So it meets the intent of the bylaw.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Oosterhoff, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for those questions, Robert. That's what I was just wondering to exact area that we were experiencing that. So it answered my question, but I just wanted to say I understand the situation. I can make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I will ask the applicant to justify the 2 to 5 inch difference.
Thank you, Councillor. My name is Chantal Suds. I'm the homeowner of 1336 Thornwood Crescent. The reason why we're here today is a complaint against our fence. The intent of the bylaw was upheld. We actually did our research before constructing the fence itself, and also hired someone from a reputable fencing company to complete the work. We used 6-foot fence boards as well as 1-foot lattice. As was mentioned by Mr. Delahunt, the lattice had to be secured by pieces, which meant that it unfortunately has exceeded by 2 inches on our side. We also did not have access to the neighboring property to complete any measurements on their side. And when the fence was constructed back in 2021, we did ask the neighbor if they had any complaints against the fence, or if they were happy with the work that was done, and they did tell us at that point in time they were very happy for the privacy. So I feel like we upheld the intent of the bylaw. In no means did we try to go against this, and that is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any committee members? Ms. Kaner, please go ahead.
Yes, Ms. Suds, what changed the complainant's mind? That first of all, they were happy with the fence and then they weren't?
Yes, great question, and thank you for that. So in 2021, when we constructed the fence, we did so after a discussion with the neighbor, and the neighbor had asked us if we would be willing to do a fence for extra privacy. We agreed with that, and myself and my husband actually paid for the fence to be constructed so that both of us had some extra privacy. After a year of the fence already being constructed, the neighbor in question did put in a complaint with the city, and that was due to retaliation. We've also been, unfortunately, had some issues with this neighbor. I won't speak on that because it's not the forum for that, but they do believe that we put in a complaint against their tree, which was in the municipal right-of-way, which we did not. So they did it out of retaliation, and that's where we are today.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Mr. Knox? No? Okay. All right. Seeing none, are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this issue?
Mr. Chair, we do have 2 members of the public and both have raised their hands to speak.
Okay, let's pick one, and please limit your comments to the size, the height of the fence. Everything else is not part of our purview. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Laura, and I'm the owner at 1338 Thornwood, one of the parties who had made the complaint. And first off, I want to state that I was not asked about if I was happy with the fence after the fact. I was asked prior to the fence being built if I was okay with the fence being built. And I said, absolutely, that would add more privacy. The fence was not hired by a reputable fencing company. It was her brother, who is a criminal. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there are matters between her brother and I at this home. And the fence is not built properly. So there's large gaps. It's not even 1.5 feet from the ground. It waves like, so it really bends when it's windy. It can impede on our yard, our fence, like our shed in the back there. So I do believe it's also a safety concern. On our side, it's definitely at least 4 inches. On our side, our backyard, and actually we were home for the measurements to take place, but it's more like 4 to 5 inches over. And she also did come to me after the fact, notifying me that, oops, sorry, we did purchase 6 foot boards instead of 5 foot boards, making it going over the variance, as well as the homeowner is also a city employee who's very familiar with the bylaws, I'm sure. And the part about the tree, that it was in relation, the person who did put a complaint was related to her. And it's also police safety, the height of the fence. So I'm reading the bylaws, and it flat out states here that it should be no more than 6 feet high with a 1 foot lattice. Now, let's say there was an incident and police, they do have to jump fences, that type of thing. There's a reason why these bylaws are put in place. It's not only a height complaint, that why I'm making this forward. Because after we started going through a couple storms, we saw how the fence was really, really moving. It's not in the ground deep enough. It's just not stable. It's not stable. And so this is a safety concern. I have a young child who plays in the backyard. I have, a little dog. So it is a concern, because if gusts of wind and you see it wavering, that's a concern to me. And I adhere to bylaws, rules everywhere. There's a bylaw in place for a reason. It's in place for the community. And when you say a minor variance, 1-2 inches, we're talking 5 inches. This is almost 1/2 foot. That is quite an exception. And nowhere in the bylaws does it state, which actually I think the bylaw should be amended, giving, what a minor variance should be allotted, whether, 1 to 2 inch, I don't know, but that's something going forward, which I propose should be addressed. This is an exceptional difference. We're not talking 1 inches or 2 inches. We're talking over 5 inches.
Thank you.
And
go ahead.
I should also note that fences, despite the lattice being 1 foot high, And the fences, any fences over, I believe, 6 feet should be a minimum of 3 to 4 feet in the ground. And when it's only not even 1.5 feet, I know so because I dug it out myself, because the stability issue, I was concerned about the safety of the fence. And that was actually open when the bylaw officer came by to measure the fence, in which they did not go into the backyard. They would have seen how it's not deep in the fence. And then when they did build the fence, they moved it a couple inches over on their, like towards their property side, very minimal, in turn left massive cement, open cement posts from the fence that was previously there. And I was told that that would be taken out if it was a professional. They left it, and it's going to affect our side. Like, so now it affects our side and where our gate is.
Okay, thank you. May I ask staff, do you see any safety concerns here? Does the fence actually wave? And is it far from the ground? And is there any bylaw on how deep it needs to be in order to be stable?
The only portions of the bylaw that speak to the construction is pool enclosures. So when we were on site, we didn't notice any substantial gaps. I can't attest to how deep the fence posts are, but only in a pool enclosure are we concerned about the depth of fence posts. So with the height of the lattice work, picture a foot of lattice work at the top, even if it was to be lowered by 2 inches and the fence is still, wavy, it's still going to remain wavy even with the removal of the 2 inches. So I can't attest to how well the fence was made. That's not in the bylaw.
Understood. Thank you. Does anyone in the committee have any questions for the applicant or for the member of the public? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Scudds, I see that you got your hand out, but we will return to you after all members of the public have spoken. Is there any other member of the public who would like to make comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you, next to speak would be Adam Correa.
Thank you.
Hi there, councillors. My name is Adam Correa. I am also at 1338 Thornwood Crescent. I am the fiance of Laura Pascal. So on July 19th, when the bylaw officer made a visit to 1336 Thornwood Crescent, it was stated that they weren't granted access to this side. I was home that day. My vehicle was in the driveway. No attempt was made to knock on my door and contact me to have access to the backyard. We also had a chain link gate at the time that they would have been more than welcome to come into our backyard and measure. So on our side from the ground, the fence is at least 5 inches over the requirement through the bylaw from front of the yard all the way to the back. There's no 2-inch average. It is 5 inches all the way. Now, I know that the fence post, the depth of the fence post doesn't matter unless there's a pool. That should be amended because that is a safety concern. If fence posts are only about a foot down and they get heaved, the fence is pushing up to a higher height. It is now unsafe in the spring when the ground has thawed. And we have watched this fence waver and sway in windstorms. This fence is not safe. It is not safe for the community. The police, if they ever have to come through this backyard, it is not safe for them to get across as well. Now, I know that they added soil on their side of the yard to make the fence measurements look appropriate to the bylaw. But if a bylaw officer would come to our property again with access, they have full access to our yard, we grant them permission. That fence is 5 inches across from front to backyard. No averages, no dips. It is 5 inches above. It's not safe. The construction is not up to par. It was not a professional installation. It was her brother. Now, I have safety concerns, again, with the children in our yard and our young puppy. If that fence comes down, it's going to hurt someone. It's too tall. It's not safe for the community. And if bylaws are made for a reason, there should be no exception granted. especially if the person that lives next door is a city employee. That just shows a bias towards the city employee. So any decision other than with consistency to the bylaw will be seen as a favoritism to that city employee. It's very polarizing if the decision is made to grant them an exception status. One law for everyone, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Ms. Scudds, did you wish to say something about the fence height?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much. Going back to what was commented on about the height of the fence and also the individual that installed the fence, I don't think we needed to mention anything about criminal or the fact that one of the homeowners was working for the city. That's not appropriate because the person that put in the complaint did so out of spite. So I don't want to speak on that. The person that's the city employee was not included in this complaint. It was against me. And also, the individual that did actually install the fence does work for a fencing company. He works for Linkline, although he is my brother. He works for a reputable fencing company called Linkline, and they install fences on a daily basis. I also want to say that the fence was actually dug down, the post, 3 feet in order to ensure that there was no movement in the fence. Today is a very windy day. Our fence is not moving. There is no movement to the fence. Fences do sway here and there, obviously through a huge gust of wind, which every fence does, but in no way is it swaying. There are no gaps in the fence, which you can see by the pictures. I also want to point out that when the fence was constructed, our neighbors had no issues putting things up on that fence. So they did not feel that the fence was too high because they did end up installing a weather vane at the very top of the fence, as well as other materials attached to the fence. So there was no way that, and I did actually go talk to the individual. There was a letter that was put forth from another neighbor in the community that said there was no risk to the property, and she was actually there when our neighbor did say that she was happy with the fence, and that was right after install in 2021. So there was plenty of opportunity for the individuals to complain to us directly, and they had not done so for a year.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee have any questions for any of the members of the public or for any of the applicants or for staff? Seeing none, then we will move into our deliberations on this issue. Would somebody like to give a first opinion and a possible motion? Mr. Storms.
Yeah, so I've listened to everybody. Thank you for your input. Just so that I'm clear on the record or to this committee and to everybody who's participating, I'll be frank, I don't care about the allegations back and forth of criminality. I don't care about who's working from whom. It's all news to me. What I care about is what we're actually here today to decide on, which is the height. So all those other comments, just so I can be clear, are irrelevant to me in any way, shape, or form with respect to how we're making the decision. What is relevant to me is that the city officers are saying that there is no safety issue from their perspective, and there is no issue with respect to the height, and they would recommend that we go forward with the minor variance. I am comfortable with that recommendation, and based on everything I heard that's relevant to this discussion, I'm comfortable putting a motion forward to allow for the minor variance.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Mr. Knox. So we have a motion to approve the minor variance. Is there any other further discussion for or against? Councillor Oosterhoff, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I really appreciate Mr. Storm's comments as well. Though I do recognize and empathize for both sides in the sense of the neighbor that had the complaint. I respect what they have said, and as far as safety, and so I'm hopeful. I guess the one question I should have asked earlier, Mr. Chair, if I'm too late, was is it a shared actually fence, or is it the one owner who owns the fence? Is it now shared so both people can adjust the fence or secure it from falling? Is if that were to get worse?
Good question, Mr. Well, who would like to handle that? Is it on the property line or is it on one side of the property line?
We don't have a survey for the back for that, so it would be the homeowners. I'd have to ask either homeowner which side it was built on.
Okay, I guess we must ask Ms. Suds.
Yeah, it was 2 inches put onto our side, as was mentioned by Laura Pasquale.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess, I mean, I do see the weaknesses in the bylaw and I empathize. I also live under a lot of regulatory, and these kind of things are a little bit frustrating for everyone to hear of the weaknesses of it, especially related to lattice and, that kind of thing. So that's something that perhaps that's in our department, Mr. Chair, one day, and we could actually have that looked at through bylaw and getting some recommendations, which is probably worth doing for the good of our community. But I am inclined to support the request for variation here. So, but I do hear both sides. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment or try and convince us one way or the other? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the proposed motion to approve the minor variance, raise your hands. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next one, 76 Lime Ridge Drive, I understand has been withdrawn. Do we have a justification for the withdrawal?
Yeah, so after further interpretation on the retaining wall and the fence constructed at this address, we no longer wish to pursue the case against the property. After reviewing the pictures and discussing with multiple departments within the city, there's no issues of safety or concern. We will take the height of the fence from the top of the retaining wall between the properties.
Excellent. So that's problem solved. Glad to hear. Okay. And section B, property updates. Is there anything under that? Nope. Glad to hear. No motions, no other notices. Oh, I guess I should ask committee. Does the committee have any notices of motions? Seeing none, we'll move along. Any other business? Quick question for the committee. How do you all feel about moving back to in-person or a hybrid model, or would you prefer to stay it this way? This should be a question that should be coming up shortly for us. Any thoughts on that? Councillor Oosterhoff?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Just quickly, I think this really works well for me. I really do like in person too. I love being with people, but for preparation, I can prepare well from here and then I can zoom in. This is quite good to me. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else wish to comment? Mr. Storms?
Yeah, I'm content. Look, all the courts are sort of moving to a high, not that this is relevant to germane to us. I'm just saying in my other experience when I'm not doing this, the courts of law are moving back to hybrid solutions. And some people, I don't want to do anything that makes it hard for witnesses to appear. Although I must admit, I miss in-person stuff. but so I'm more than happy to do hybrid, but if everybody's comfortable with this, then this is great too, because it's more important that witnesses have access. I just don't want, if a witness ever says like, look, I have bad computer access or something like that, it'd be really nice if we had a hybrid option so that they could come down and we could all meet. I think I only ever did this twice in person, and then ever since that we've been virtual. So I'd like to see everybody again someday, but I just want to focus on access. So if somebody says they don't have computer access, then I think we should be really open to hybrid so that everybody can be accommodated. That's my only comment.
Great. Ms. Kainer?
Yeah, so I feel the same way. I'm happy with the Zoom, except for, I mean, in this case, there was the complainant who said that he could not appear on Zoom because he doesn't know how to use Zoom. I don't think he had a computer. And that is a concern, that we are excluding people who would like to have a say, and if they can't be here. So I would also be open to the hybrid model in that case.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Knox.
Completely open.
Okay, glad to hear. So if it means anything, considering that majority, hybrid's fine with me at your convenience, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Correspondence, we've got that. And date of next meeting will be April 17th at 12 p.m. unless there's no business, in which case it will be canceled. I will now ask for a motion to adjourn. Mr. Storms moves, Councilor Oosterhoff seconds. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. We are adjourned until then. Have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy.